Hi, this is Liam Lanigan with a very short video just about the major assignment that you're doing this week, the critical review of a scholarly piece of writing. I just wanted to briefly talk about identifying scholarly sources and appropriate essays for appropriate articles for this kind of assignment, and then just briefly talk about the purpose of the assignment and what would constitute a successful attempt at it. So a couple of people have asked me about, how to find articles and so on. You can, if you're stuck, use one of the sort of secondary articles that we've had on our reading list, but I would like people to spend a little bit of time just searching some of the library databases to see if you can find anything that interests you in particular. You can use either JSTOR or Academic Search Complete, or even the TWU Library's universal search function. If you go to the library website, it's on the front page there. One of the questions people have been asking me about is how you'd know if an article is peer-reviewed. For one thing, with some of these search engines, particularly Academic Search Complete, you can specify to only get peer-reviewed responses, so that your search will only show up things that were peer-reviewed. But generally, if something shows up in a recognized literary journal, then it's probably peer-reviewed anyway. But if you have doubts about it, you can get in touch with me and I can verify whether I think it's peer-reviewed or not. But usually you can check whether a particular journal is properly peer-reviewed. Beyond that, you want to make sure that you're picking an article that's at least 10 pages long and up to 20 pages. The reason I specify this is because sometimes in journals you'll get shorter pieces, and those pieces are either reviews, so somebody will have published a book about the Odyssey and you will see these journals will review them. You don't really want to write about one of those reviews because it's not making an argument about the Odyssey. It's usually evaluating the quality of the book that they're reviewing. So you want to avoid those. And also there are sometimes very short scholarly pieces that deal with a small textual issue that are very focused in, and you don't necessarily want to deal with those either because they're probably not making a kind of controversial argument so much as correcting the scholarly record. So you want something 10 to 20 pages long roughly, and you want something that's focusing on a thematic issue. So usually if it's dealing with the sort of issues that we've been discussing in our discussion forums, treatment of women, the idea of the Odyssey as world literature, the way that the Odyssey has been adapted through time, anything like that really. But as long as it's making an argument that you're in a position to analyze and to evaluate the quality of that argument, then it will be appropriate. But as I say, if you have any doubts about whether what you're writing about is the right kind of thing, just send it to me, send me a link to it and I can have a look. Just in terms of what this is asking you to do though, ultimately it really is just an essay where you're engaging with a piece of scholarly writing. The reason that we're doing it is to get used to the idea that these kind of secondary readings that we do them very often, and we'll put them on and we see them usually as a way of helping us to understand what does the Odyssey really mean. Here's some interpretations by an expert in the field, and maybe we'll get a better insight into it through doing that. And that is the main use we have for that type of scholarship. But I wanted to emphasize also that that we tend to take these as inert texts, that we use them to take information and then apply it to our own understanding of the Odyssey. Whereas really we want to get used to the idea of engaging critically with other scholars. So you are a scholar of the Odyssey as long as you're writing about it. And so you don't just take on trust the interpretation that one scholar or one critic puts forward, but rather you try to understand, well, first of all, what kind of agenda does this author have when they're writing about the Odyssey? What sort of purpose does their essay serve? Because um, they're trying to put forward an argument. They're not necessarily saying something that's factually correct or the only possible way of interpreting this. So first of all, understanding what their purpose is, what argument they're trying to make. And then secondly, trying to analyze how they make it. What kind of evidence do they provide to support the argument they're making? And then trying to evaluate, beyond analyzing how they make the argument, also evaluating how effective that argument is. Are there aspects of it that you would consider strengths or weaknesses? And being able to separate just the factual material of an essay from how that argument is made, and being able to understand that there's a gap between these two things. So what we're trying to foster here is a critical eye, the idea of you as a critical reader. So you're not just reading to extract information, but rather you're thinking about, well, how can I engage with this text? How does my interpretation of the Odyssey intersect with this interpretation by this other scholar? So those are the basic requirements of this, I suppose. In terms of how it's evaluated, I would draw your attention again to the rubric. The main points are being gotten from having a central argument. Okay, so you need to clearly articulate whether or not you think that this is an effective argument, and what ultimately you think is the purpose being served by the essay that you're responding to, whether you think it's effective or not. There needs to be that clear stance. If you clearly articulate your stance in relation to it, you're in the right direction for getting the points for the central argument of your essay. The really vital thing that I want to emphasize is the use of supporting evidence. This is the second criteria in the rubric. So any assertions you make about what kind of argument they're trying to make, and whether that argument is effective, and how they build their argument, you need to support any assertions you make by saying, this is where we can see this in the text. Incorporate quotations or paraphrase of what the author is saying, but make sure that you're analyzing the significance of that evidence. So you're not just summarizing what their essay says, but you're analyzing why it works or why it doesn't work, and you're providing evidence to support your argument about that essay. There are points for the essay structure as well, so just being well organized, having a clear idea of how your argument is going to unfold. And you also get some points for the writing quality and citations, but again, it's not a predominant part of how this is being assessed. The other major part of the rubric is analytical insight. So I want to make sure that we are not just summarizing what this person has said, but being able to reveal aspects of their argument that may be surprising or that could prompt us to reconsider a major issue, and that you're showing how they built their argument, not just the surface of what their argument is. And I think as long as you are engaged critically with the essay that you're reading, as long as you are conscious of, well, what is the purpose of this essay? What are the sort of supporting evidence that they use? And am I taking a clear stance in relation to whether this is effective, and clearly explaining why you think it is effective or ineffective? You'll do fine on this essay. Like I say, if you have any doubts about whether you're using an appropriate source to begin with, just get in touch. But as long as you're doing all those things, you'll do absolutely fine in this essay. And its main purpose, even if it is a major assignment, is so that you're in the frame of mind that you're reading critically when you engage with these texts. So that's a skill that you'll be able to carry forward into the rest of the course, and it will come in handy when we're thinking about how others think about the later texts. So thanks very much, and hopefully this is helpful.